Hello and welcome to USMMTG. I'm Taylor, and with me is Squid.
Hello, Internet.
And we thought we'd open things up with a couple deck techs. The first one here is in EDH deck tech. I personally love playing EDH. It's my favorite format of all time. What do you think of it, Squid?
I really dig EDH. The concept of only having one card really makes it so it's not a money format like the one I play. Legacy is such a money sinkhole.
I know, you spend a lot on Legacy.
Oh, don't we all?
Anyway, so we're going to start things off with my deck. I run Riku of 2 Reflections. This is a very creature-heavy deck. I use Riku's ability to copy a lot of enter the battlefield creatures, so that way I can generate a lot of incremental card advantage. It's very, very fun. So diving right in, we have the lands. I run about 10 forests or so. Green in this deck is a very, very useful color. It's probably what I have the most of. And then after that is blue. I run about 9 islands. Those 2 colors make up most of the creatures and other cards, as well as it's the important colors for Riku's creature copying ability. And then I run about 4 mountains. Red in this deck isn't that important. I don't have many cards that utilize the color. So moving on, we have non-basics. I have 2 of the hideaway lands, Mosswort Bridge and Spine Rock Knoll. I think that they're useful for helping you cheat cards into play, some decent card advantage. I know Squid likes using them a little bit.
I do. I have more experience with Mosswort Bridge than anything. I really like it because in my deck, and EDH in general, just getting to 10 power, you can do it in a turn or 2.
It's really easy, particularly in this deck because I copy a lot.
Yeah.
So it just helps me get cards out faster. It's really useful.
Nothing like popping a hideaway hypergenesis on someone.
That would be nuts. So moving on, I have the 3 bounce lands from Ravnica for these colors. I know in Constructed they aren't usually that useful, or they weren't when they were around. I think in this format they can be valuable and a little undervalued for the most part. What do you think?
The format I feel like is slow enough that you can really, in terms of building your mana up, you're spending turns building up your mana base. So, taking an extra turn to drop, hitting a land drop,
Yeah.
It's better to hit a land drop with a land like that when it comes into play tap lands, rather than missing a land drop completely.
I agree. It's just a useful card.
It is.
And then I also have the 3 come into play tap cards for these colors from the core set and Innistrad. Along the same lines, they're really useful. And usually I have enough basic lands in play where they'll come into play untapped. It's very rare that I have to play them tapped at all. So yeah, they're good. And then I have Command Tower and Rupture Spire. They just give me the colors, all the colors. Useful cards. I prefer having something like Reflecting Pool over Rupture Spire, but sadly I don't have that card.
No,
it's a good budget card, I think.
Really is.
Yeah.
A Reflecting Pool, and everyone's like, oh, Reflecting Pool is a very good card, and I would agree with it. But I think for the money and effectiveness, Rupture Spire does the same thing.
Yeah.
You just have to do a little bit to get it.
Yep. Moving on, I have a few fetch lands. I have Evolving Wilds, Jumped Panorama, and Terramorphic Expanse. Just useful for getting whatever color basic land I need. Very just useful in this deck. Moving on to utility lands, Kessig Wolfrun. I really like this card.
Very good.
A lot. The thing is, with this deck, I usually tap out every turn playing cards and copying with Riku. However, there are rare occurrences where I'm not getting anything to play or anything to copy with Riku, And because of that, I usually need something to sink my mana into, and I feel like Kessig Wolfrun is a great card in this format. I think it could be a game ender. I've beaten people using this card.
Oh, yeah. I've been on the receiving end of the beatings many a time.
Yeah.
From Kessig Wolfrun. And then it's just an amazing card. And
it is.
Right now, I mean, it's definitely a staple, and it's got its foot in the door for most of them. I mean, Standard, Modern, EDH, Yeah. I don't know about its usage and ability in Vintage, in Vintage and Legacy at least. But
I don't think that would be a format for this card.
No, it's a very slow card,
Yeah.
And I think the format right now is at a place where it will really shine. I think it shines especially in EDH.
I've gotten this thing to go off to give one of my creatures plus 17 once. It was amazing. Moving on, Reliquary Tower, I think this is just a staple in this format. Gives you no maximum hand size. And there's a lot of card draw in this format, so that's just very powerful. And then we have Tectonic Edge, land destruction, useful for getting rid of those pesky lands like the mazes or manlands, storage lands. And it's even kind of funny when you destroy other things like Tectonic Edge or Wasteland or something like that.
Yeah.
It's just kind of funny to see that happen.
Beat them to the punch.
Yep. And then the last land I have in the deck is Temple of the False God. I think that this is also a very useful card in this format, and I think is almost a staple. The fact that it can add 2 mana to your mana pool is powerful. Very powerful. I know Squid doesn't have one, but his deck kind of allows him to set up a lot easier with his mana.
Oh, yeah. I mean, personally, I would use one, and I might eventually.
Yeah. So now we're going to dive right into the creatures. Like I said, it's a very creature-heavy deck. A lot of enter the battlefield creatures, 2-for-1s, stuff like that. And the first one is Sphinx of Bethune. It's Fact or Fiction on a stick. And it's a very big creature to boot. So if I can copy that with Riku, 2 Fact or Fictions and 2 5/6s are powerful.
Nothing to scoff at.
Nothing to scoff at all. Very useful, and I can usually get a lot of very useful cards off of those Fact or Fictions. Next up is Consecrated Sphinx. I think a staple in blue.
Oh, yeah.
For the most part. The fact that it lets you draw off your opponent's draws is awesome. Sometimes I'd copy this, sometimes I wouldn't. I feel like copying it would just kind of paint a huge target on your head.
True.
So I usually tend to just let this be without copying it.
Well, and you also can get the whole, it doesn't die to dismember, which is huge.
Yeah, but I don't think
in format
in this format.
Well, it isn't, but in general, I'm saying it's a good card. It's good to survive that,
That's fair.
Not a coincidence that Dismember came out and that card shot up $20.
Yeah, this is true.
No coincidence at all.
Nope. Okay, so moving on, we have Duplicant. Duplicant is useful. I usually use it as general removal. But, I mean, also, like, if there's just, like, another pesky creature on the field, it's good to get rid of that. And the fact that it basically becomes another one of those creatures without the abilities is kind of cool. Like, if there's, like, a huge creature on the field, I'll play Duplicant. It's gone. Then I get it, which is just useful. And then kind of along the same lines, we have Phyrexian Metamorph. This is more general removal. Particularly for the ones that have a huge impact on the board. But, I mean, it's also useful for copying artifacts. In this format, I feel like artifacts are very powerful. And copying a very useful utility artifact or something like that, or a powerful mana accelerator, or something like that, is just very, very, very useful.
A lot of the staples in this format are artifacts. You got Soul Ring.
Soul Ring, Sensei's Dividing Top.
Mana Vault. The list goes on.
Yeah.
Honestly. Yeah.
And like I said, it's also just good for general removal, which is what I usually use it for.
Yeah.
Moving along, Primeval Titan. I think some of the best mana acceleration this format has ever seen, and the game has ever seen. This will usually be copied with Riku. This will be one of the first cards I try and find in the deck. If I can copy it, there's 4 lands, which are usually the enter the battlefield tapped lands and probably command tower, if I don't already have any of them. And it's just so useful. I love this card in this deck.
Not a lot to be said.
Nope. Great. It's Primeval Titan, enough said. Anger. This card, I like. It's a 2/2 for haste, for 4, and then when it's in your graveyard, as long as you control a mountain, creatures you control have haste. Very cool, particularly like with Primeval Titan, for example. You play the Primeval Titan with Anger in your graveyard, you get a couple lands, then you can attack with it right away, and then you get more lands.
Yeah.
Really fun card. Kaiga. Kaiga the Tidestar is kind of fun in this deck. I'll either do one of 2 things with Kaiga. I will lay it out there as a blocker and as a defense, because when this thing dies, you get to gain control of one of your opponent's creatures. So it's kind of like deterrent from being attacked. Or if I just want the creatures, I'll copy it with Riku. They'll both die to the legend rule, and then you get 2 of their creatures, which I think is really useful. What do you think?
I would agree with that. I'm a personal fan of Kaiga the Tidestar. Easily one of my favorite dragons from the Kamigawa block.
Yeah.
It's a shame we can't play the first one. My number 1.
Kokusho.
Haha.
Moving on, Muldrifter. 2/2 flyer that draws you 2 cards. It costs 5 to play. But a fun thing with this card that synergizes well with Riku is that it has Evoke, which basically you play it for its Evoke cost, which is 3, and then it enters the battlefield, and then after you get the enter the battlefield effect, you sacrifice Muldrifter. So, but what you can do is you can pay it for its Evoke cost, copy it with Riku, you get to draw 4 cards, the original will die, and then you get to keep the copy, which is really cool. So for basically paying the same amount of mana for the original card, you get 4 card draw and a 2/2 body, which is good card advantage, I think.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's definitely an amazing card to have.
Yep.
I'd consider it an EDH staple if you're running blue.
Yeah, I'd say it's pretty good. Moving on, Clone. Again, like Phyrexian Metamorph, it's usually just general removal. Copied is hilarious.
The real Slim Shady of clone cards, if you will.
I'd say so.
Yeah.
Moving on, Wonder, very similar to Anger. When this is in your graveyard, as long as you control an island, creatures you control have flying. Useful, mostly, I use that as blocking. I come across a lot of generals with flying, so having this in my graveyard is usually good to have.
I don't know who would run a general with flying. I mean, it's just such a silly thing.
Yeah, I don't know why anyone would. Yeah. Anyway, moving on, Seedborn Muse, useful because it untaps all my permanents at the beginning of each other player's untap step. Like I said, I usually tap out with this deck a lot, so that just keeps my mana and my creatures open to casting other spells or blocking, which I find would be useful. Also works well with like the hideaway lands. So if I have like the 10 power for Mosswell Bridge, let's say, I can play it and get whatever's hiding under the bridge, which is fun. Terastodon. This guy's a beast.
Really is, yeah.
The fact that it's already a 9/9 for 8 is cool. And the fact that it destroys stuff when it comes into play is awesome. I mean, yeah, it has the drawback of giving the controller of the destroyed card 3/3 elephants. But, I mean, you don't have to use the ability, which is cool, or you could give yourself the elephants by destroying useless stuff that you have, which is cool. It's very rare, actually, I find that I use the destroy ability.
You've used it on me a few times. That
last game that we played, I used it.
But I mean, you were staring down, a 12/12 Janara and a 15/15.
Petrified Woodkin?
Yes.
Yeah, that was scary. The 3/3s were a lot better than that.
True.
Anyway, moving on. Vithian Renegades, artifact removal. Like I said earlier, I feel like artifacts are very powerful. So having things that can get rid of them, just a useful thing to have. And the fact that it's on a creature, giving you the little extra body, whatever, is nice to have. Yajimaya Elder, I think this is one of the best mana acceleration cards in the format, personally. When it comes into play, you can search your library for 2 basic land cards, put them into your hand, and then you can pay 2 to sacrifice it to draw a card. Just useful. Aether Snipe, I really, really like. I have a little combo with Riku with this, because it usually costs 6, but it has an evoke cost for 3. So what you do is you play it with its evoke cost, copy it with Riku, and then what you do when it comes into play, you can return a non-land permanent to its owner's hand. So what you can do is you can usually, with the original, bounce another card that you want to replay to copy with Riku, or bounce something that's really annoying on the field, and then you use the copy to bounce the original before it's sacrificed. And then when that happens, you get to keep the copy, and then you can keep playing the original like that, while all the while building up a lot of 4/4 tokens.
Yeah.
It's a nice little combo. Moving on, Magus of the Future, just really good card advantage.
Yeah.
Lets you play cards off the top of your deck, lets you thin things out. It's really nice. Sylvan Ranger, just basic land search, really good. Bloom Tender, I think, is a staple in multicolored green decks in EDH. Because when you tap it, you can add 1 mana to your mana pool for each color among permanents you control. So if you have Riku on the field, for example, it adds a red, a green, and a blue all at the same time, which is just nuts.
Yeah.
I think that this should be in every multicolored green EDH deck.
Yeah. I say that, but I don't run one yet.
Yes,
So.
yes, you should get one.
Oh, I will.
Oracle of Moldiah, I consider this the diesel engine of mana acceleration.
Oh, yes.
I mean, it runs very similar to Magus of the Future. It lets you play the cards off the top of your deck if it's a land, and it lets you play additional lands each turn. So you can just start generating a lot of mana.
Works very well with Call of the Wild, I might add.
Yes, it does. So this just helps you go nuts really fast. Solemn Simulacrum, I don't think I need to explain anymore. Balefire Dragon. This guy with anger in the graveyard is crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Comes into play, attacks, and then you basically destroy everything they have.
Yeah.
Woodfall Primus, I think, is also very good in green. Comes into play, destroys a non-creature permanent, and it has Persist, so you can get it back.
Yeah.
And if you copy it, there's a lot of removal right there. Trinket Mage, I think, is a blue staple.
Oh, yeah.
Lets you find artifacts that cost 1 or less. It gets you, like, Soul Ring, Sensei's Divining Top,
Mana Vault, Black Vice.
Black Vice.
The Rack.
Frost Titan, usually use it to tap down scary creatures. Brawn, similar to Wonder and Anger, when it's in your graveyard, as long as you control forest, creatures you control have trample. Wormcoil Engine, don't need to say anymore. Acidic Slime, good removal.
Staple in green, I'd say.
I'd say so too. Eternal Witness, another staple in green, graveyard recursion. And that does it for the creatures. Moving on to artifacts, Sword of Feast and Famine, I think is the second best sword in this format.
True, with the first being obviously
Fire
and Ice.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, in this deck, it just goes absolutely nuts because it lets me play more cards by untapping my lands. So, like, I can tap out, play a bunch of cards, attack. If I'm able to get through with the equipped creature, I can untap all my lands and then play more cards, which
works
wonderful with this deck because Riku's very mana greedy.
Works very well. I notice. I've been tinkering with the idea of working with that in Finest Hour. So I get an additional main phase.
Yeah.
Because I untap all my mana. Not really, but it acts as almost a main phase.
Yeah.
And I can attack again.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
It's good.
Great card.
I run something similar in this deck. I'll get to that in a minute or two.
Yeah.
Mimic that, I think, is a very undervalued card in this format, personally.
Really? I consider it a staple, personally.
Yeah, I love it. The fact that it can just continuously make tokens is awesome.
Yeah.
Like, there was one game I copied a Cynic's line as it was going to the graveyard, and then I just started destroying my opponent's lands, and it just won me the game like that. This is a very powerful card, I think.
It provides answers to, like, big issues,
Yeah, I agree. Another fun one I did was I copied Sun Titan as it was going to the graveyard. Oh, it was so funny.
I've seen someone copy that thing with Primeval Titan.
Oh, God.
Oh, God, it gets out of hand with Primeval Titan.
And then moving on. Rings of Brighthearth. Laura Wooden Block, I think, had a lot of very subtly powerful cards, and this is one of them.
Oh, yeah.
It works really well with Riku because it lets me copy Riku's copying ability. Yo, dog, we heard you like copying. So, and another fun thing is it lets me copy Birthing Pod's ability without having to sacrifice another creature, which is really cool. Moving on, Relic of Progenitus, I think a staple in this format. Removing graveyards is useful because there's a lot of graveyard recursion, I find.
True.
Sensei's Divining Top, enough said.
Enough said.
Skull Clamp, enough said. Crystal Shard, I think kind of a very useful borderline staple in blue. Very useful in this deck because it lets me bounce cards I want to play again.
Very niche blue. You almost want to run counterbounce with it.
Yeah, almost. Sculpting Steel, I think, is really useful. It lets me copy powerful artifacts that are on the field. Soul Rings, powerful artifact
Mana
creatures,
Vaults,
stuff like that.
Worm Coil Engine.
Why not? Birthing Pod.
Why not?
Hey. Lightning Greaves, enough said. Sword of War and Peace, I like swords in this format in general. That's why I threw this one in. The protection is also kind of cool because it kind of protects it from most of the removal colors. Also, the extra damage and life gain is nice too. Birthing Pod in this deck is nuts. It lets me do so many different things. Like I'll usually use this to sacrifice like Anger, Wonder, Brawn, or something like that to get them into the graveyard, give my creatures whatever they give my creatures, and then I can go get like a 5-drop or a 6-drop or whatever I need at the time. Very, very powerful. Manolith, just decent mana acceleration. Simic Signet, more mana acceleration. Gruul Signet. Is it Signet? Kind of fun. Soul Ring, staple. Expedition Map I like. It lets you go look for any kind of land card, not just basics. So with this, I'll usually get, like if I'm, like I'll get like one of the come into play tapped lands, Command Tower, Reliquary Tower, Temple of the False God, if I have enough lands in play to use it. Really useful card.
I feel like it's underrated at times. A lot of people, are always using, I'm trying to think of examples, Wanderer's Twig a lot of people use because it costs one less.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think the fact that it gets more than just a basic land is, it's just good.
Yeah. Well, if most people are like me, they didn't read the card. So
that's true. It's true. Moving on. Moving into sorceries. I don't run many sorceries or instants in this deck. As you saw, I ran a huge number of artifacts as well as creatures. But sorceries. Cultivate, good mana acceleration. Explosive Vegetation is more mana acceleration. Bribery. This is fun. It lets me steal big, scary creatures from my opponent's deck, or more subtly powerful things. I like playing a lot more subtly with this card. There was one time I went and I got Grand Arbiter, Augustine the Fourth. That kind of put me in a decent position. It made people have a harder time playing other cards, and it made some of my cards a little cheaper, which was nice. Rite of Replication, I think, is a staple in blue. So much copying can be done with this card, especially if you copy Rite of Replication.
So you get 2 activations of it.
And if you kick it, kick it once, and then you copy it, you get 2 kicked Rite of Replications, getting you 10 copies of whatever you're copying with the right.
Yeah.
It's hilarious. Fabricate, I like. Lets me tutor for an artifact. Usually go get like Birthing Pod, Wormcoil Engine, a sword, something like that. Maybe Lightning Greaves. Whatever I need at the time. It's very useful. Green Sun Zenith.
I'm going to interject with this. Staple in green, hands down.
Definitely.
Green Sun just...
I love using this card with Riku because what I can do is I play it usually for 6 or something. I play it, I copy it with Riku, then I get, let's say I cast it for 6. I get 2 Green Sun Zeniths for 6 if I copied it with Riku, which allowed me to go get 2 6-drop creatures. And then I can copy those each when they come into play.
So you get 2 copies each.
Yeah, it's just nuts. And then you get to shuffle it back into your deck for later use, which is fun.
Definitely the best Zenith out of all of them.
Oh, hell yeah. Speaking of Zeniths, moving on to instance, Blue Sun Zenith. I don't use this one as much, surprisingly. Although it's useful to have, I think. The card draw's nice. The recurring card draw, which is cool. And the copying thing, like if X on this card is high enough, copying it is automatically awesome. It just draws you tons of cards.
I tend to stick in the 4-5 range with this card, just because it's like, I'll pay 7 or 8 to draw 4 cards, 4 or 5 cards, which I'm not opposed to.
Yeah, I agree.
I have no way of copying it like Riku, but
it's just fun.
It's just a handy card.
Fact or fiction? You saw Sphinx of Athun. Yeah. Comet Storm. I really like this card. It's good removal. Also really good to deal damage to people as well. Especially if you multi-kick it. That just goes bananas. The amount of damage that you can do is nuts. I love this card.
Especially in a deck that copies like yours, you can just...
Yeah.
You could clean a board,
Easily. Reverberate. Copies instants or sorceries, and if you copy Reverberate, you just made a copy of a copy. Congratulations, you just had copyception. Summoning Trap is useful for just cheating creatures into play, especially if I copy Summoning Trap again. So I get 2 Summoning Traps, which allows me to get 2 creatures that I can copy potentially. Really useful. Aggravated Assault. This, in combination with Sword of Feast and Famine, is usually an auto win. This allows me to attack for an infinite number of times as long as I can get through. Because I have this on the field. I attack with the creature with Sword of Feast and Famine. If it goes unblocked, I untap all my lands, which let me activate Aggravated Assault, giving me an additional... It untaps all my creatures, giving me an additional combat phase, followed by an additional main phase. I attack with the Sword of Feast and Famine creature again, untap all my lands, do it all over again until they're dead. I've won a few games with this. It's amazing. Call of the Wild, again, fun for cheating creatures into play, especially bigger ones.
Yeah.
If I have something like Sensei's Divining Top,
you can stack your draws.
Yeah, or
Even in
Oracle of Moldiah,
I use that one.
Magus of the Future. It's just useful for cheating things into play if they're really big. Rites of Flourishing. I think that this is just a good card in green. Usually your opponents get the benefit first, but in this deck, I don't know. I think I usually am able to generate enough card advantage where them getting the first benefit's not that big a deal.
Yeah.
And then we have Planeswalkers really quick. I run Jace as a card draw engine. And Karn, usually as removal. I don't ever reset the game with him. That would just be incredibly stupid, I think.
I would do it just for the laughs, honestly.
The lulz?
Just for the lulz, just to be able to say, hey, yo, dog, I heard you liked your mana base. so I played a Karn Liberated, and now you don't got one. Sucks to be you.
Fair.
I've seen people do it, the people who are really competitive about EDH that run Karn Liberated, race to the 14-point mark.
I've never seen it happen personally, but
I've seen videos online and have talked with people who run it, and they're just like, it puts a 2 to 3 turn clock. It's like, you got to stop Karn, or else I'm wiping the board clean and winning in 4 turns.
Fair.
Yeah.
I usually just use them as removal, though. Usually a general, or like there's something on the field that's really, really annoying, stopping everyone from doing what they need to do, or is like this close to winning the game. Usually play Karn, exile their card, and then just
continue on with your day.
Yep. And that's it for my Riku of Two Reflections deck. If you like what you saw, please like the video, leave comments, suggestions, questions, whatever you want.
Don't forget to subscribe.
Yeah, don't forget to subscribe, and tell your friends, please. This is a new website. I don't know how long it will be around because we're both kind of graduating at the end of the semester.
True.
But, I mean, for the most part, it's just a fun little thing. So please tell your friends.
If you have any ideas or suggestions for things you want to see on here, you want to see us play these decks, you want to hear us discuss the cards that you think are good, and you want our opinions on.
And I mean, we'll be recording gameplay and other stuff as well. Later this week, we might have a booster box opening of Dark Ascension with our friend Ryan. He's getting one later this week, and he said he'd be willing to do that with us. And then coming up in a little bit, we'll also have Squid's EDH deck. So until then, this is Taylor.
And Sam. Okay, Squid.
Thank you. Signing off with USMMTG.